In previous screencasts, we've created Codeigniter installation, created a users table and a data model to interact with that table, and then a login system. In this screencast, we're going to go ahead and create a basic admin site and a user CRUD. A CRUD is a system that allows you to create, retrieve, update, and delete records from the database. Many admin sites that you're going to be creating will consist primarily of CRUDs for various types of data. Here in the main controller, we have the login method, which loads the login form, performs validation on that form, and actually logs the user in via the user model method login. Currently, in order to access that, we have to go to main/login. You may not want to have your user see main/login. It might be more appropriate for just /login. So really quick, we're going to go ahead and create a route for this. So let's say the user types in login. We want to load the method in the main controller called login. You can use routes to rewrite basically the controller and method to a different URI segment. So if you want, we can go ahead and create logout, and so instead of doing main/login, we can just do front/login to load up that login form, and then we can go ahead and create a quick logout method. Actually, there we go. So the logout method just destroys the session and redirects you to the login form. So let's go ahead and log in. Welcome to the dashboard. That means we're logged in, and then we'll go ahead and log out. Alright, so now we have no session. So we're going to pretend like this is our admin site. Usually you would have /admin/ whatever, but we're just going to go ahead and use what we have as an admin site. So we'll first go ahead and create the controller for the users CRUD. So we'll add a new PHP file, users, and then we'll need a folder for the views. New folder, users, and we're going to need a way to make sure that you're logged in if you're at the user CRUD. So first, let's go ahead and create this controller. We'll start by just copying the dashboard. Fastest way to do it. Okay, so here's the users CRUD. The index is going to list the users in the system. Then we'll have add, edit, and delete. You can name these however you choose. This is just the way I like to do it. And so effectively, this is retrieve, create, update, and delete. So if we change the order here, you can see why it's called CRUD. CRUD, create, retrieve, update, delete. So that's all of the methods we're actually going to have in this controller. So the first thing we need to do, I guess besides the constructor, of course, first thing we need to do is secure this controller. So we create a constructor, which is a function that has the same name of the class. So when this class is instantiated into an object, the constructor will be run immediately on that data object. We currently only have one user type in our database table, so let's go ahead and we'll create user type enumeration. We can just call it user admin, so that in this case the user is either a standard website user or an administrative user. and let's go ahead and add user status as an enumeration. And status is a field that I put in almost every single table. And it always has the same values: active, inactive, deleted. Now there are tables where I don't actually use, for example, inactive, but I go ahead and I just throw it in there. And the reason is MySQL creates an index so that you can perform queries and it'll search through the data quicker. If you delete records out of your database table, then you actually have to recreate the index in order to get the performance gain from that row being lost. It actually can make your index file unnecessarily large, and you'll actually have to do database maintenances just to keep it clean. By having status, we can just set the user status to deleted, and then have the get users method only return non-deleted records. If this ever becomes a problem, if your website is incredibly successful and you want to start getting rid of old deleted data, it's really easy to perform just a deletion and then a re-indexing. So that's not a big deal. But if you delete a record out of a table, you have to also look at all other database tables that could have records that point to this one. So if a table is cross-referencing a row in this table, then you're going to end up with errors on your website. And so to stop that, we just create this status and never actually delete records from the table. Okay, so user type and user status added. Let's go ahead and update the model. Apparently I already have user status in here. User type. We don't need to require either of these. I already have this in here. I have actually since well, I'll come back to another screencast and update some of this code, but it's what you can do instead is create an array of keys, so of indices. So you have user email, user password, user type, user status, and you can loop through those and perform this action on here, and that way the code isn't so redundant. But we'll just leave it here because it's easy to read and it's what we already have. So required. Now, get users we can get by status and we can get by type, and these are the parameters, and we're also going to receive an object that contains type. Okay, here's this limit, query. Alright, so let's just go ahead and say if not is set options user status. So if they don't declare the kind of status that they want to pull back, we can do this db where user status not equal to deleted. So this way, if you pass a user status of deleted to this method, you'll get back a list of the deleted users. This may be useful for stats or who knows what. But if you don't declare anything for user status, then it will just not return deleted records. If you declare user status as active or inactive, well, since you're explicitly declaring one or the other, it's also not going to return deleted. So this works out. We need to add user type up here. Okay. So this will allow us to get, like we could do a query for all admin users or all admin active users. Okay. Now we can interact with those fields. We need to be able to secure this. So first of all, let's run the controller classes constructor, and that way we'll have actually this class will actually have access to Codeigniter, the Codeigniter infrastructure. And then every time this user's controller is called, we want to make sure that the user is logged in as an admin. So let's go ahead and go over to user model and create a new authentication method. The secure method checks a user's session against the past parameters to determine if the user has access to a specific area. That's good enough. Now options and values we can pass. For now we really just want to verify against user type. Parameter is an array called options, and we're going to return a boolean that is just the success. So now we'll go ahead and create the method. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and capture the user type. So user type equals this session user data user type, and we're going to go ahead and make sure that when they log in the user type is actually set. Almost forgot that. Okay, this is going to have actually a required value. We're going to no point in securing this if we don't have a user a parameter to secure it against. Alright, so that means we know the options user type index is set, and we have the user type that's in our Codeigniter session. So at this point we can just say if user type equals options user type, return true, return false. So that kind of does the job. I think instead what we'll do is this. If is array options user type, then we'll do one comparison, else we'll do another. So this way we can pass an array of user types. So then we'll do for each options user type as option user type. Okay. If option, or actually if option, user type is equal to user type, then return true. So if the user type parameter is an array, it's going to loop through. If any of them match the user type in this session, then it will return true. If it's not an array, then we'll just match the value itself. And if nothing matches, we'll go ahead and return false. So that's all we need for our secure method. Just go back to users. This user model secure array user type admin. Now if we wanted to allow admin users or regular users, we would just do this. There. Now this would allow either type of user in. So as long as you're logged in, you'll be allowed on this controller, in this controller. Alright, so that will return true or false. So if not, redirect login. So that way they can't get into the system, they're redirected to the login, and we can even improve this by saying flash error, you must be logged into a valid admin account to access this section. And let's go to our views, login form. If this session flash data flash error. Alright, so if we go back to here and we try to go to users and define property user model, so apparently I need to load that in auto load. Yep. User model generally auto-loaded, so that every time Codeigniter starts, it loads the user model. That's because on quite a few pages we're going to be securing it, so no point in explicitly declaring the load of the user model on every page. So let's try again. You must be logged into a valid admin account to access this section. So there's that error. Alright, so let's go ahead over to the test account, admin, save, log in, test at test.com, test. Alright, so now we're logged in. Now we go to users. Alright, here we are. We're running a blank index, no errors. We're logged in specifically as an admin. So as far as the index, we're going to go ahead and want to list out a list of every single user, whether they be admin or not. So we'll just go ahead and do data users equal this user model get users, and we just won't pass any parameters. This will return every user that is not deleted. Then we can do this load view users/users index, and we'll pass the data parameter. Now we need to make this view. Alright, this view we're just going to go ahead and put a link to add a user and then a table. Let's just go ahead and do TRs. What fields do we have? We have the email, type, status. Let's just go with that. So now we can do if is set users and is array users and count users greater than 0. Okay, so there's a reason we do this this way. First of all, we're checking for the existence of the user's variable. If we try to check on the user's variable without checking that first and it doesn't exist, we're going to get a warning back and an ugly error message for our users. Once we verify that it's set, we want to make sure it's an array because that's the expected data structure here, and then we want to make sure it's not empty. We want to make sure it's not empty and that there's more than one record, so that if there's no records, we can give a specific message here that says there are currently no users. Now, if there are records, we can go ahead and loop for each user as user. And then create the table structure. There. That's all we need for now. So let's go ahead and run it. We have add a user, which doesn't go anywhere yet. And then here's a table. I'm going to go ahead and add a border since this has no styling. A table with all of our users in the system. So if I wanted to go ahead and create a new account, he's a user and inactive, which means the account is there but they can't log in. Then here we are. Now we need to be able to add new users. So we'll go down here in the users views and click new PHP file, users, add form. Now my naming convention on these would be my naming convention has changed a lot, but now I have a folder that is named after the controller. Then the view is named controller name underscore descriptor underscore type. Type is either index, form, yeah, I think that might be all for now. But the reason I do this is if you have a bunch of different files open up here and you have a user add form and an account add form or who knows what, deposit add form, then all you'll see in your tabs is add form, add form, add form, which doesn't really tell you what you're doing. So just to make it less confusing and so that you always know exactly what's going on, I added the controller name in there and it's worked out really well. So for the add form here, let's go ahead and do form open, and we're going to make it go to users/add, and then field set legend add a user, or I'll just do this required field create an unordered list item, label, email. And we want to make sure that we name these the exact same name as the database, the same name that we use for this variable. Ubiquitously, just everywhere, we'll always use the same field names. Okay, so here this creates a form text field with the name user email, and if the user has submitted the form already with a value, it's going to put the value back into here because with this set value method. One place we might not want to use that is the password field. As is, if you don't enter your email address, which is a required field, but you do enter a password, and you submit the form, it's going to take you back to the add form with the error. The email field is required, and your password field is going to be blank, even though you already typed something into it. Now you could do set value user password, and that would refill in this form, but usually you don't want to do that because the password field has the character masking, so you can't see it, so they might forget what they typed, or they might have typoed it and not be able to check. So it's generally better just to have either the password as a form input field, or to have confirmation passwords and all that jazz. I prefer form input if you can get away with it. Of course, if it's anything that could be used from a public machine or whatever, you should probably offer the option of masking it. But that's a different discussion, I suppose. So here we're going to go ahead and do form error user email, so it'll output any errors for that field here. And we don't really need to put status here because there's no reason for that, but usually, but we're going to go ahead and do it just to show you. Usually everybody would start activated by default. Now here we have the actual value that's going to go into the database, and then the display value. And we're going to go ahead and set the value for that. Actually, user status, user type would be correct here. And user status is pretty much the same structure. Actually, let's go ahead. Alright. Submit button. Don't need a name. Alright, add user. So now let's go ahead and go over to our users controller and fill this out. So we're going to list, load, view, users, add form. Alright. That should do the job. So, yep, this takes us to user/add, and here's our form. You know what? For the sake, we should go ahead and add the asterisks that declare that these are required fields. It's just good practice to tell the user which fields are required. There we go. Alright, so now we have all this jazz. Doesn't matter because this doesn't automatically fill in because we have no form validation system in place right now. So let's go ahead and go back to here and do this load dependencies. Validate form. Okay, so here we have user email, user password. User type and user status. First parameter is the name, second parameter is the human readable name. Third parameter is the rule set. So we always do trim first, and to remove any white space from the sides. Then we'll mark it as required. Okay, so we can go ahead and execute the form validation. Alright, if it passes validation, then do blah. So we'll go over here, hit enter. The email field is required, the password field is required. These cannot get that error message because despite being required, they always have a value. We actually want to add more. We want to make sure the email is a valid email and the password is longer than 6 characters. So we'll go ahead and okay, so we'll go ahead and enter Sean, my password, pass, yeah. Alright, add user. It's now the email field must contain a valid email address. The password field must be at least 6 characters in length. As you can see, the password field did not fill itself in again, as we discussed. So here's email Sean at test.com, and my pass, that's 6 characters. Alright, so add user. Okay, nothing happened. That's because we passed validation. Okay, as you can see, validation passed. So here is where we need to actually do the work to add the user. And this is actually super easy. This user model, add user, post. So that will add the user. We can verify it by having a user ID returned. So let's go ahead and look at what exactly is happening. So the post array has these indexes set: email, password, type, status. So let's go over here to add user. Add user accepts email, password, type, status as parameters. Actually, you have to have an email and password, else this won't run correctly. And if you don't declare a status, it will give you active by default. And then it will just pass it to the active record insert method, and it will return the inserted record's ID. Now, if for some reason the insertion fails, the method insert ID will return false. Therefore, we know that we can check user ID to be not false, and that's how we know the user record has been successfully added. So if user ID flash confirm is the name of the class that I use for positive feedback. And we'll redirect to users. This will take them to users/index, but we don't have to declare index. Else now I'm going to go ahead and still redirect them to users if it failed, because the form worked, it passed validation, but there's a deeper problem here, and so we're going to do error. There has been an error. A database error has occurred. Please contact your administrator. And then spin it back out to the user CRUD. Alright, so let's go ahead and hit reload, which will send our, we'll just hit back. Alright, add user. Unknown column 0. So here I'm sending 0 and 1 for some reason. Let's look. Print r post die. Not sending 0 or 1. So active record is doing something funky. 0 in list. Oh, I bet I know what it is. Yeah, okay. This default method is off, but we really don't even need this default method. Let's look at, oh, pff. Obviously, it's because I did a comma instead of the associative operator. Alright, so now we have added a user successfully with this system. We need to do two more things to it. We need to edit it and delete it. So real quick, let's go back over here, add these columns. Alright, edit and delete links. So edit takes you to the wrong place. Alright, edit takes you to user/edit/user ID. So let's go down to edit. Takes parameter user ID. Alright, so if data user is not true, then it could not pull the record. So if not data user, redirect users. That way we don't get a bunch of errors when it tries to load in the user record. Now that we have that, we can just go ahead and load the view. Okay, now we need to create the view. Users edit form, and it's pretty much the same as the add form. Edit user. Edit slash, this time we have to add an ID. Now we have to add a new value here into the set value method, and that is a default value, which would naturally be what we have in the database. Password works differently. So instead of showing the password and just editing it here, we'll make this a set new password field, so they would only enter a value here if they want to change a password. And over here we do user type, and down here user status, and save changes. So let's go ahead and edit SeanAtTest.com. You can see it pulls in the account information. Okay, yeah. User inactive, user inactive. Okay. So let's go ahead back to the controller, and we'll go ahead and copy the form validation because it's pretty much the same. Okay. So there's going to be a minor modification. The password field not required. If, okay, so as you can see here, when a user is added, we go ahead and pass the parameters to add user. Well, this time we're going to pass it to update user, and we're going to set up the post variable a little bit differently. We need to make sure it includes the user ID first of all, because if we look in the user model, we can see that the update user has a required field, user ID, and then accepts the fields that can be changed as parameters. So we have to make sure that's passed so that it knows what record to change, otherwise it's going to bail on us. And the password is always being passed as blank if you enter no data. Instead of resetting their password to nothing every time, we can go ahead and do if empty post user password. So if nothing was entered, we go ahead and unset user password. That way it doesn't exist in the post array, and we can go ahead and send this through. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this in the condition section of the if statement. And so if update user, we can go ahead and say the user has been successfully updated, else a database error has occurred. Alright, that should be what we need, except for one thing. Oh, okay, cool. If we pass user password, it is going to go ahead and MD5 encrypt it, so that's great. So let's check it out. So here we have SeanAtTest.com. We'll change it to 2. Admin user can log in. Must contain a valid email address. This is definitely not a valid email address. Thank you. Admin user can log in. Save. Alright, so admin active. We should go ahead really quick though and say, I'll just copy it from the login form we just did. Copy the flash error. Now usually you would have another view that contains these messages and you just load it like once at the top, but this is going to be unnecessarily verbose and a little bit messy, but allows us to see it all at once. So there, if a flash confirm is set, we'll just add success since there's no style to differentiate an error from a confirmation. So here, we'll go ahead and edit it again and make it so you can't log in. Success, user has been successfully updated. And we're not going to be able to create an error because that would mean fundamentally our database structure has changed. Okay, so our status is updating for every single record, which means there's a problem in the model. It doesn't, okay. As you can see, this method does a lot of changing. There you go. Now that should work right. So this time when we set it to inactive, it should only make itself inactive. Great. Alright, that works great. Now, deleting it is going to be very simple. We'll go ahead and, first of all, verify the record's existence. If the record exists, we will update the user. Alright. With the user ID that was passed, user status is going to change to deleted. Set flash data, flash confirm. The user has been successfully deleted. Now if your client calls you and tells you they accidentally deleted an important something or another in your database, all you have to do is go into the database and change the status to active. So here we are. I'm going to delete. I love how it changed all these because I didn't have the ID set there. So this will be test@test.com. This will be test2@test.com. And we're going to go ahead and delete the Sean one. Delete. Gone. Now we would have a deletion confirmation here, but no point in showing that. So there you go. This way you can add, edit, and delete a user. The only other thing I can think to add to this is some pagination real quick. So let's go to the user's index and do if is set pagination and if div class equals pagination div. Alright, so now we have our view completely ready for it. We'll go ahead and go over to users, the index here. We'll start by loading the pagination class. This is something you probably don't need to auto load since you're only going to use it on a select number of methods. Okay, then we'll need the offset will be passed, and the offset is going to be the record at which we're going to start retrieving. We'll alter the get statement so that we are limiting ourselves to a specific number returned, and the offset will be offset. Now let's go ahead and set the variable per page equals 1. That way we'll have pages even though we only have 2 records. So we'll only have one account per page. We'll end up with 2 pages total. So then we need to configure the pagination class. So base URL will be equal to base URL users/index. And then we go ahead and end that with a slash. Then we need a count of all of the rows, so it knows how many pages. And we're going to use that get user statement. But we're not going to have these parameters. Instead, we're going to create a new one. Count is true. Now, we don't want to pull back every record every time we do this pagination. It's just not necessary. So instead, we'll do